Very good evening to you. I'm Tebogo Makhubela. Welcome to Unwrap Africa. Tonight we talk travel, geology and fine art. This is Unwrap Africa. Siyaqhaqha. But first, our question: how should African countries collaborate to make sure the continent benefits from the upcoming G20 Summit, which will be held in Johannesburg in November? Let us know your thoughts by sending a voice note. The WhatsApp number is +27 8459 1897. You can also find us on Facebook at SABC Unwrap Africa. We're also on X. SABC News_TV is our handle. Let's get into our Continental wrap now. Residents in Rwanda's capital, Kigali, have welcomed the signing of a peace deal between Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo, saying it could revive long disrupted cross-border trade and improve daily life. A Tunisian court has handed a 2-year sentence to Sonia Damani, a prominent lawyer and critical voice of President Kais Saied. Rights groups say that this marks a deepening crackdown on dissent in the North African country. Also this week, Mali has completed its takeover of the Etela and Morila gold mines abandoned by their previous owners. The government says that it will proceed now with operations there, but questions remain over how any untapped value can actually be released. And Cameroon's tourism minister, Bello Buba Maigari, has accepted his party's nomination to run for the presidency in October. Long-serving President Paul Biya is yet to confirm if he will seek re-election. A Nigerian artist, Adebayo Sion, known as the Diligent Artist, creates portraits in minutes using a unique speed painting technique. He basically paints upside down, adding layers of paint to reveal instantly recognizable faces, entertaining audiences and challenging traditional art methods. So Tanzania is celebrating being chosen as Africa's leading travel destination this week. SABC correspondent Daniel Kijo filed this report from Dar es Salaam.
African tourism is growing in size and importance, and the best the continent has to offer has been recognized at a prestigious ceremony in Tanzania. The coveted title of Africa's leading destination was awarded to the host country, who went on to claim more than 24 other awards. Among the highlights, the Serengeti National Park was named Africa's leading national park, while Mount Kilimanjaro earned the title of Africa's leading mountain national park. Zanzibar was recognized as Africa's leading beach destination, and the Ngorongoro Conservation Area was honored as Africa's leading tourist attraction. The Africa and Indian Ocean Regional Final of the World Travel Awards also spotlighted Tanzanian destinations such as Tarangire National Park, which was celebrated as Africa's leading elephant paradise. The ceremony, held in Dar es Salaam, highlighted Africa's increasingly diverse tourism offerings and improvements in infrastructure and conservation. While Tanzania celebrated its success, other East African nations also continued to compete on the continental stage, with Kenya, Rwanda and Uganda also making stride in tourism and conservation efforts. The World Travel Awards, established in 1993, are widely considered as the Oscars of the travel industry, and Tanzania's strong performance sets the stage for potential global recognition at the grand final in Bahrain later this year. Daniel Kijo, SABC in Dar es Salaam.
The 17th BRICS Leaders Summit has kicked off in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, under the theme Strengthening Global South Cooperation for More Inclusive and Sustainable Governance. The group initially comprised of Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa. It's since expanded to include Egypt, Ethiopia, Indonesia, Iran and the United Arab Emirates. Sherwin Bryce Pease reports that President Cyril Ramaphosa is leading the South African delegation to Brazil, while the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres will also be attending.
This year's gathering in Rio marks 16 years since the first Leaders Summit in 2009, a multilateral effort seen as an affirmation of an increasingly multipolar world framed by geopolitical and trade tensions, debt concerns, and an increasingly perilous environment for the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. The bloc represents more than 40% of the global population and represents a sizable share of geopolitical and economic clout.
The BRICS cooperation mechanism is the most important platform for unity and cooperation among emerging markets and developing countries in today's world, and serves as a significant force in facilitating the realization of an equal and orderly multipolar world and an economic globalization that is inclusive and beneficial for all. This Leaders Summit is the first to be held after new member Indonesia and 10 partner countries joined the BRICS. A number of other emerging markets and developing countries, as well as international and regional organizations, have also been invited to participate in the meeting.
Brazil's leadership of the group will focus on two priorities: global South cooperation and BRICS partnership for social, economic and environmental development, with 6 core areas: global health cooperation, trade, investment and finance, climate change, artificial intelligence governance, multilateral peace and security architecture, and institutional development, areas that align with the principles of the recent Financing for Development conference held in Sevilla, Spain.
We must get resources flowing fast. Countries must lead by mobilizing domestic resources and investing in areas of greatest impact: schools, healthcare, social protection, decent work, and renewable energy. Unlocking these investments requires strengthening tax systems and tackling illicit financial flows and tax evasion, and helping developing countries dedicate a greater share of their tax revenue to the systems people need.
South Africa is seeking to align its G20 leadership this year with both the G7 recently held in Canada and the BRICS in Brazil.
The global order is strained, resources are limited, but our resolve is not in the months ahead. We will continue to host the G20 summit in Johannesburg. We will deepen our partnership across the global south. Our foreign policy is not abstract, it is rooted in the lives of our people. And it is measured not in the speeches, but in schools built, jobs created, and peace sustained.
While the issue of peace and security from Ukraine to Sudan to Gaza will remain front and center.
What's happening in Gaza is not a war. What's happening in Gaza is a genocide conducted by a highly prepared army against women and children. That's what's happening. And this is what humanity should be outraged by. It's this that society should feel outraged about.
Notable absences this year will include China's President Xi Jinping, who will be represented by Chinese Premier Li Jiang, and Russian President Vladimir Putin, who will not travel due to an ICC warrant for his arrest. Framed as a forum of emerging economies who could provide a counterpoint to Western geopolitical dominance, the group has yet to fully exert its collective influence on the reforms so desperately needed in the international system. And as the group continues to expand, finding solutions through common ground becomes a more complicated undertaking. Sherman Bryce-Pease, SABC News, New York.
So as I was telling you earlier, South Africa will host the G20 Leaders Summit in November this year. It will be the first to take place on the continent. Our team has taken to the streets of Dar es Salaam in Tanzania, as well as in Kampala in Uganda, to hear from people there whether decisions taken by the G20 will have any positive impact on the economies of African nations. Have a listen.
Most of those countries are in Europe and America. So hosting it here, it's good, but not per se that it will make changes. Somehow I feel like by it being held here in Africa, they might discuss more of the things that affect also Africa. So I hope also my country will benefit from the decisions that will be made on this meeting.
Currently there is a globalization, meaning that there is an industrial revolution. Now our country is going up live on mostly in economic development, to be an industrial economy country. So we'll take a step toward the development of building so many infrastructures associated with the industries, so that people can benefit more, a lot of employment will be created, and so on. And also it will be a call for the investors outside the country or all over the world to come and invest in our country.
So the G20, from what I know, is a group of 20 powerful countries coming, and they have a summit, and I believe they've decided to come to South Africa, basically to put together, make policies, and to see how best they could work with other countries in Tanzania, Africa, and all over the world. So hopefully we'll get good exposure. Tanzania is a brilliant place. There's a lot of scope here. The tourism sector is big, it's booming, and we look forward to having more exposure and being on the map.
The world has opened up. There are no countries that are not interlinked with others. Uganda is now trading with the rest of the world. We trade with European countries. Until recently, we were also trading with the United States of America. That means that the most industrialized are now looking upon us developing countries as partners, not as recipients of the dropouts in form of aid and humanitarian aid.
To a lame person, like for example me, who is a Ugandan, and if at all I was someone who comes deep from Busoga, who doesn't know about even these Europeans, because we used to hear about the whites. It might not make any difference.
This is Unwrap Africa. When we come back, we'll bring you a conversation with a South African doctor whose work in geology has won him an international award. Stay with us. Dr. Makhubela, thank you so much for joining us on Unwrap Africa. We've come to visit you here at the University of Johannesburg. You're barely a week back from winning that National Geographic Wayfinder Award, looking at the contributions you've made to the space. Speak to us about the significance of that moment, a decade into your career.
Yes, you're right. I'm just a week into, my new prestige, as I was awarded the National Geographic Wayfinder Award as one of 15 recipients this year to receive the award internationally. So it's a huge honor for me, very humbling, but I'm glad for the recognition that I've received. The award is a recognition towards my work in human evolution. I'm a geologist, one of the few geologists who have chosen, to do geochemistry research that helps us understand human evolution, because South Africa has a lot of fossils that are found in the cradle of humankind, and so I contribute to that.
And the work that you're doing currently, from when you started on the Homo Naledi project almost a decade ago, when you were much younger, now you're experienced in the space, how would you say your interest in the work and the output, especially at a research level, has changed, especially how you view the world?
Wow, very interesting question. Well, yes, when I started, honestly, the field was still small, and my view of the research I was doing was very minimal. I thought I was just doing one thing, which was provide geological ages to the fossils, and that's it. But in the past 10 years, my work in the space has evolved, where I'm now doing quantification of the past landscape, the past climate, and the past ecology and environmental reconstructions to understand human evolution as a whole. Of course, when I started, I didn't know there's a need for this, in the space of human evolution. And so it's been a very, developmental process for me in this space. And now I'm involved in understanding the earliest cultural behaviors of a species that is not human, which is Homo naledi, of course, in this case.
And what fascinates me is you sort of, I don't want to say you came into this profession by accident, but this wasn't the childhood dream, but now you're thriving in the space. Let's talk about when you had the initial pivot and why there was that change of course.
You wouldn't be wrong to say it is accident, you know, because of course when I came into geology, I was very purely interested on the Earth's surface and its processes, things like volcanoes and earthquakes. That's what drew me into geology. And then fast forward, I was funded by a mining company. I was supposed to work for a mining company. I didn't. When I finished my honors, I decided I'm staying to do masters. And then I found myself doing research at the Cradle of Humankind. So that part was not planned or conceived by myself. It was fate, you know, that drew me into it. And then I started doing this research.
And there's a wealth of knowledge, right, that's yet to be unearthed in terms of the origins of humanity, especially where the African continent comes in, because much of it is traced back here. Where do you want to go next, perhaps, in your research in uncovering those very subjects?
Sure. Well, that's a very good question and a very good point, because let's think about it this way. 100 years ago, that's when Taung child's skull was discovered or published for the first time. Discovered in 1924, published 1925. And what did the scientific world say at the time? Impossible. Humanity does not originate in Africa. You know, that was just 100,000 years ago. And then since then, how many species of human origin importance have we found in South Africa? At least 6, you know. And so they've informed a lot about the fact that Africa is the cradle of humankind, and South Africa or Southern Africa has an important role to play in that. And so we see, or at least let me say, we haven't found archaic Homo sapiens, so the earliest of our own species, humans, in Southern Africa yet. We only see the more evolved Homo sapiens much later, you know, after the time, for example, of Homo naledi. And now the question is why? And I want to try and understand that. And to understand that, we need to understand processes that were happening on Earth at the time. You know, the climate, the landscape, you know, why were they not here? And they were, for example, they were in Northern Africa at the time, you know, around 300,000 years ago. They were in Northern and East Africa. Why were they not, why are we not finding them in Southern Africa? That's the question, and I hope to contribute to that.
Let's talk about money. Whenever I speak to researchers and academics, they're saying there is so much that we still don't know, but we're not getting the money to fully explore. Are you seeing a change? And perhaps let's speak to why it's important to invest in research, especially in South Africa and the continent more broadly.
Yes, it is very important, you know, to invest in research. Obviously, in many places, many countries, and in South Africa, this is true as well. A lot of research is in the private sector through R&D, you know. And in South Africa, there's very minimal public research funding. And also, recently, it's sort of very compartmentalized into certain sectors or disciplines. So that's a challenge, especially for what I do. Often I found myself, you know, not covered by many of the research grants that are advertised, which is a challenge. But at least for myself, I don't have to worry anymore, because I'm now a National Geographic explorer, which means I receive a lot of funding. For example, first with the Wayfinder Award, I'll be receiving $50,000 US, which in rands, I mean, it's a game changer.
Can I get a loan?
Well, let's circle back on that. Maybe when I get more funding, you know, because I'm going to get additional funding and other resources, then maybe.
And then it leads into what I found to be very interesting, your work that you do with other postgrad students. And how intentional are you in particular in going or introducing young black graduates into the world of research and staying the course? Because you can go easily work in mining, make money faster, but it is arguably at the research level where the most impact can be made. Am I right?
Yes, that is true. So, like I said earlier, I'm one of the few geologists who chose, and very few, by the way, who chose to stay in research, you know, and then Wes in human evolution research. Those who stay in research, they still do economic geology research. And so I am committed, you know, to ensuring that I build the next, or I contribute to building the next generation of scientists who are going to help us unravel more about human evolution research in South Africa, because it's very important. You know, we've got so many fossils and so many records that still need to be studied. And so I'm committed to making sure that at least every year I'm getting at least 2 master students for now. But I think with the National Geographic brand backing me and the funding, I'll be able to get more students to join this type of research.
And lastly, personal level, what makes you tick? And professionally, what more are you actually looking to do?
Personally, knowledge, knowing more. I like to know a lot. Knowledge is power. You know, you can never know enough. And when you know a lot, or at least a lot about a lot of things, it helps you in many cases. You know, you can adapt to many different situations and different people. So yeah, that's personally. Professionally, well, obviously I want to become a professor at one point, and that will be through my research. But at the same time, I want to make a significant contribution that really helps South Africa solidify itself as an important cradle of humankind.
Doctor, thank you so much for speaking to us, and congratulations once again. Unwrap Africa finding you Africans and everyone else on the continent who's really doing great things to better advance our knowledge of who and what we are and how we move forward. Hello again. Our question tonight: how should African countries collaborate to make sure that the continent benefits from the upcoming G20 summit, which will be held in South Africa in November? Some of your comments have already started coming in. Let's have a look at a few of them. Matilda says, how will towns like Rustenburg, Mahikeng and Matlosana, that's in the northwest of South Africa, be included in the programs of the G20, seeing that the moribund Northwest government could dodge attending, as was the case with the South African investment summits? One here says, Africa is moving forward with President Cyril Ramaphosa, our full support for the G20. Lufuno says these collaborations don't benefit the majority of South Africans. Dennis says African countries should demonstrate strong leadership as well as coordination to ensure a unified voice and effective representation of African interests at the G20 summit. And then one last one says, trade, not aid. This cannot be repeated enough. Trade, not aid. No begging for funds for anything. Build industrial power. South Africa destroyed its industry. It must be rebuilt to suit modern times. Now, Unwrap Africa has been to visit an art gallery here in Johannesburg. That's where we managed to meet up with Zimbabwean artist Solomon Mugutso. He gave us a glimpse into his love for art and traditional food. Our producer, Nonhlanhla Mthembu, has this report.
Zimbabwean artist Solomon uses his brush strokes to tell the story of African families and their traditions.
My journey as an artist started way back when I was young. I grew up surrounded by art. I grew up in a village that was vibrant. I think it was God's way of redirecting me to do work that is more impactful, work that's going to outlive me, and work that really tells the story of an African child. A story of hope, a story of love, a story of unity. As Africans, we are guided by hope and the spirit of Ubuntu.
Today, he's also with his chef, and together they shared with us some of the delicious dishes that remind them of their home country, Zimbabwe.
Famari, we are known for celebrating our African heritage, whether it's Zimbabwean, which is where I grew up, or in South Africa, which is where I reside in now. And I really like clients like Solomon, where he actually allows me to, have that nostalgic sense when I'm actually cooking.
It's very important that we continue to tell our stories through food, through art, through fashion, and telling our stories through art, because all those things, there's an art even in food, in the way we prepare our food, in the way we dress ourselves. It gives us a sense of pride in ourselves, in who we are, where we come from. So if we infuse that into our storytelling, when we are trying to preserve our heritage, it happens effortlessly.
And that's it for this edition of Unwrap Africa on SABC News. We hope you've enjoyed watching the show as much as we've enjoyed putting it together for you. We're back here 8 p.m. next Sunday. Bye-bye.